Let's go to Debbie, listening in Carson City, Nevada. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
I can,
Okay.
yeah.
I want to respond to something that you said yesterday about the overreach or the possible overreach of the government in health situations.
Yes.
And what I want to do is I want to bring up two historical things, and then I just want to hear your comments on it because I really don't know.
Okay.
And this is what I think. If somebody says my facts are wrong, I'm not going to argue with them. But as far as two things. Number one, as far as TB, as late as I think the 1960s, the government, the public health department, used to confine people with or without their consent into TB hospitals. I think they were called asylums, TB asylums.
Sanitariums.
And they did this because sanitariums. I'm sorry. Okay, you are correct. Not asylums, I'm sorry. Okay, but they did this because in order to get rid of TB, you needed a combination of several different drugs, and they needed to be taken on a regular basis for either 6 months or a year. And so the public health department ended up taking people who they thought would not be able to comply to this, like the destitute and the homeless. But I had a friend's sister in the 1960s. Her older sister was actually put into one of these hospitals for 6 months, and she was not destitute, and I'm sure that her family would have complied. The other situation as far as what the government did is I'm sure you heard the sad story of Typhoid Mary. She was like a really poor Irish immigrant who came over from Ireland, and the only thing she knew how to do was cook. And they actually traced the typhoid epidemic to her, and they told her, you may not go into cooking. You just can't do it. Well, they did this a couple of times, but because
Please forgive my interruption, Debbie. Just timing, we don't have all the time necessary to go into those details. So what about this do you want to comment on?
I just want to comment is way back, the government has actually done things to help the public as far as health goes. And I don't know for myself what is overreach and what is not as far as the confining people to their houses and closing everything down. And I just want to say they have been involved in the public health for a long time. Those are the two stories I remember.
Yeah, and I am familiar with that.
And I just wonder what you think.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. I recognize and I freely grant that government at various levels has not only the right, but at times the responsibility to take action to protect the public good. Sometimes it's a curfew where, a natural disaster takes place and they call in the National Guard and there's a curfew and you can't come out after dark. That can be a very good thing. It can protect lives and stop looting and things of that nature. So as a general principle, I don't begrudge the government the necessity of stepping in and taking action like that when it's warranted. The question in this situation, when we're looking at the coronavirus, is, especially given the massive conflicting data and they're just constantly changing their tune. Remember Anthony Fauci, the doctor you see on TV at the White House practically every day now. 6-8 weeks ago, he was saying this is not going to be a big deal. It might have been a little bit longer than that. So 9 weeks ago, something like that. This is not going to be a big deal. Don't worry about it. And then more information came. Then they changed. The death rate is vastly overblown because the number of overall deaths that they attribute to COVID-19 are not from COVID-19. I shouldn't say the majority of them, but many of them were deaths that were of people who had COVID-19, but they were not killed by COVID-19. They had some comorbidity. I'm learning all kinds of new words now as I'm learning about the coronavirus. There's even an instance that this was raised by Dinesh D'Souza online. I saw, he said, and they would count somebody who got in a car accident. If the person tested positive for COVID-19, they'd count that as a COVID-19 death. My point is simply that we're living in a time right now where it's the overreach seems all the more visible because it's predicated upon statistics and claims that are turning out not to be true. And that's irksome to many people. Well, why did my business have to go out of business? I had to lay off all my employees and I'm going bankrupt because why? Because, unlike the flu and other things that we've had before, which we most likely could have gotten along with, we've all been on lockdown and it's wrecked the economy. We saw Governor Cuomo, for example, and I think I aired this, what is today, Tuesday? So I aired this, I think maybe Friday. And he says, you know what? Hey, guys, we're really shocked. But it turns out that the vast majority of the people who are dying of COVID-19 are the people who are staying home, the people who are hunkering down, the people that we've been telling, don't go out, stay at home, stay at home. Those are the people who are dying. We don't know why. And the people who are out and about and defying the laws and not wearing masks, they're not the people who are dying. So when you bounce that up against the way in which now we've got maybe as many, perhaps as 20% of working Americans are now out of work, tens of millions of people who are now unemployed and seeking benefits, rightly so, businesses that have been collapsed, whole industries that have been destroyed, the food supply chain. We've been talking a fair amount about the food supply chain with Tyson Foods and other meat-producing manufacturers and how they're really having a lot of problems and it's affecting people at the grocery store. My wife and I were looking on Instacart to buy a steak last week. And a steak that we would have paid maybe $6 for 2 weeks ago is selling for $12 now. Same steak. So I hope you don't mind my wanting to pile in all these other things, but I see it as it's the big picture, and people are saying, how come we can't go back to church? How come we can't go back to work? How come we can't resume some kind of normal life again when even the experts can't agree among themselves as to what is really going on here with COVID-19? And is it really worth collapsing the economy and putting people out of work and all the disruption and the college students who are paying $40,000 a year for tuition, but they're not getting taught in schools. They're having to do it over Zoom. There's just so much involved now that this is where when somebody said, like Governor Pritzker of Illinois, and he says, sorry, we're not going to open up churches for maybe a year because of the coronavirus, which he just announced in part of his five-phase plan to open Illinois. Just to give you some details, in phase 3, gatherings of up to 10 people will be allowed. In phase 4, gatherings of up to 50 people will be allowed. And gatherings of more than 50 people will not be allowed until phase 5. And he's saying, we may not get to phase 5 for at least a year. That's overreach, I think, anyway. And it's irksome to many people. I respect the scientific community. I rely upon them. I rely upon physicians to tell me the truth because I don't know the medicine. They do, and I trust them. But even they are saying, Deborah Birx, one of the top doctors, she's there with Dr. Anthony Fauci at the White House briefings. She just said last week, she says, I can't trust anything from the CDC, Centers for Disease Control. I can't trust any of the data that they're putting out. So I bet you didn't expect that long-winded of an answer. But this is a real mess on stilts. And then when you have governors saying, sorry, Christians, you're not going to be able to go back to church for at least another year, people get fed up with that. And you juxtapose that with what Governor Cuomo said. It's not the people who are going out who are dying. It's the people who are staying home that are dying. Go figure. At some point, you just have to say enough and stop with the overreach. And that's my impression, Debbie. I'm sorry to overwhelm you with all of that verbiage.
No, you don't.
But
as a matter of fact, I agree. My big thing is kind of sad. I almost think no one really knows anything about anything, but you have to make a decision and act upon it. But I want to go back to church. I go to daily mass. Of course, I'm watching daily mass now, but I think that's the thing. But I'm retired, and this is good. I actually came down with COVID, got over it with just flu symptoms. So I don't think I have the great fear that some people have. And the other thing is, my big fear is that one of my kids who are in their 30s will get it. So
we don't want that.
Know. I don't
but
know
in the meantime, though, and I'll leave it at this, Debbie, I do have to take a break. Has it been worth it to put 20% of the American working public out of work? Has it been worth it to cause now going on 3 months of massive and perhaps even irretrievable disruption of our economy? Has it been worth it to put the whole country into chaos and basically collapse the airline industry and the trucking industry and so many things that have happened as a result of making decisions based on faulty and conflicting information? I don't think it has been worth it.
No,
really, I don't.
I don't think it has either. But I like I said, I'm very. I know people have to make a decision and they have to act, but I almost think no one knows anything about anything. They just think they do. So,
yeah,
I don't know what that says about me, but that's what I.
Doctoral dissertations will be written for decades about what we're going through right now. People will be studying this. If Jesus doesn't return in the meantime, people are going to be studying this calamity, and in retrospect, we're going to see all the missteps and the bungling and the guesses that didn't pan out. And it's just, it's an astonishing situation we find ourselves in, Debbie.
I just pray about it every day. A lot.
Yeah, me too. But at some point, you got to get back to work and you got to get back to reality. We can't live this way indefinitely.
I agree, but you see, I'm in a good position. Number one, I've had COVID, and number two, I'm retired.
Yeah.
I'm in my 70s.
God bless you.
So it's not fair for me to judge it. I just pray about it because I don't know the answer, and I honestly don't think anybody else does either. Isn't that bad of me?
When Dr. Burke says that she can't trust anything from the CDC, it's like, okay, well then, who can we trust about anything? When Governor Cuomo says, oh, guys, guess what? All this stuff we were saying about stay home, those are the people who are dying, and the people who go out are not the ones who are dying. None of it makes any sense to me. So anyway, Debbie, thank you. I'm glad you let me let off a little steam on that topic.
For more of The Patrick Madrid Show, visit relevantradio.com/Patrick.